Hey there everyone. Today we're going to learn about the world's most popular open source operating system. Hope you'll join. Hey guys, welcome back. This week we're going to be touching on Linux and specifically a distribution called Ubuntu. Ubuntu is an open source Linux software that is available to anyone and is completely free, which is actually really different in contrast to the Unix systems that we reviewed in previous episodes. Windows and Mac OS require payment to a company that owns the software, whereas with Linux, you can go to their website, download it for free, and modify the software in whichever manner you'd like. Today we're going to stray away from the model we've used for Windows and Mac OS, because usually you'll find that even though you can use Linux as a non-computer user, there's a couple of technicalities that you might get caught up on. So today I really want to focus on not only the use of Linux, but also the installation. So for today I'll be using a VMware, or a software that allows me to run a virtual version of my operating system on my computer. You won't necessarily need to do this in the future, or in your instance, if you're installing it on a hard drive, in that case, the setup is pretty simple. But even with that being the case, I thought it would be an important topic to touch on in the context of installation, because Linux is just a little different from the other operating systems we're familiar with. So let's get started. So to get started, I'll actually go ahead and start booting up my virtual machine. And while I wait for all of this to configure and get set up, I'm actually going to go ahead and discuss why a operating system like Linux could be valuable to you or be something worth learning. In the world of computers, or just actually even imagine a scenario where you have to set up 20 computers, whether it be for you and your friends to get a project together, or whether it be for a classroom and or a business setting in the future when you have a job. The important thing is that when it comes to operating systems like Windows and Mac OS, you'll have to shell out thousands of dollars just to get an operating system in order to use the computers you bought that already cost another couple of thousands of dollars. With Ubuntu, you have the opportunity to use an operating system that's not only lightweight, fast, but also free. And really, I can't think of anything that's better than that. Usually with Linux, people have this fear that they won't be able to run or use the same programs that they use on other operating systems. But in recent years, the most popular Linux distribution, and others like it, have found ways to run those programs from other operating systems on their own system. And with that, Linux has been able to utilize a lot more and do it a lot better than operating systems like Windows and Mac. And is actually why you'll see that Windows is transitioning over into an open source system, mainly due to the success of systems like Ubuntu and Linux. So here we have our install screen prompt, and for today, even though I said we were going to run through the installation, usually the only thing you'll find that's different between the trying and the installing is the fact that it will walk you through an installation process, and the part that really matters is it having to break your hard drive into two partitions. A partition is just kind of like a segment of your hard drive. Let's say your hard drive is full of 400 X's, and we want to use 2 of those X's to hold secure files in order to make sure that everything runs properly and securely. Security is one of the massive things that's focused on within the Linux community, just because you don't get that same anonymity in other operating systems. But for today, we'll go ahead and just try it, because this will allow for us to look over just a standard use case on Linux and have a quick view at how we navigate the operating system. So if it pays attention to my mouse seems to be taking my input just a little slow because I actually only gave this virtual machine access to about a gigabyte of RAM. So at this point, we've gotten to explore Windows and macOS and seen the difference between how their file systems work, and really, they're actually really similar. Nowadays, most operating systems are homogeneous in terms of how they expect their users to understand and interact with them. Here in Ubuntu, we see that right away we have access to a browser, we have access to a mailing service. Here we can go ahead and look into our file system, and like that we have access to, just like on macOS, our desktop, our home, our documents, our downloads, our music, and our pictures, videos, and of course a recycling bin, or in this instance, a trash can. Now, just like in macOS, we have a place to essentially view the different apps that we can run within the system. And you'll find that Linux is actually similar to macOS in the sense that it almost looks like it's something that could be an app. And honestly, you could run, if you have any old Amazon Fire tablets or any old Android tablets just laying around. You could run Linux OS on that tablet and maybe find a second use for it. Have it just be your your media device for the time being. So alongside that, we have things like Rhythmbox, which is a software that allows you to make music and or play it. And just like any other operating system, we'll be having a taskbar here to navigate apps that we can open. And really, the great thing about Linux is the fact that you can customize it. If you go online and look for ways to customize Ubuntu, you'll find thousands of different flavors on ways and approaches on using a computer. I have friends who have little animated characters in the corner of their screens. I have friends that have, actually this applies to Windows as well, but have little animals that join along their journey on using their computer for some odd reason. Alongside that, I don't know if you can tell, the system isn't running optimally, but currently I'm only running this operating system on a single gigabyte of RAM. Now, that is crazy in contrast to other modern operating systems that require usually 2 to 4 gigabytes to even run nowadays. Here, I can actually get everything to run relatively well for a pretty low-end hardware. So, finally, in terms of interacting with Linux OS, you'll find that it'll be exactly the same to Windows, but with a flavor of macOS. You'll find that a right click and left click are paid attention to here. Here, you'll most likely be interfacing with a Windows-based keyboard, but you can find keyboards without the Windows key, which will be the only key that isn't really paid attention to by Ubuntu. You'll have your right click in order to get your options, and you'll have your left click in order to perform and or click to activate softwares or select items. You also have just like any other graphical user interface, you have drag and drop. And then finally, in the taskbar up top, you'll have things for settings, turning the computer off, your network, and volume, all available. And really great thing, if you're bilingual and or like multiple languages, you have some pretty quick access tools for even just changing that. Going back to the customizability, this clock, I'm not a fan. If I wanted to download something, I'm sure I could go onto Google and go onto this Firefox browser and find an alternative where maybe I could have my clock be animated here on my main screen. Really, what I think the main takeaway of Linux is the power of really having individual voices heard. Everyone can contribute to Linux, and everyone can change it to be what they want. So, hopefully you've learned a bit about Linux in general, and learned how to navigate Ubuntu today. Next week, we'll take a dive into an even more complex operating system, which, oddly enough, is even It's minimal in contrast to the systems we've been using, but it's more complex in terms of the understanding you have to have in order to navigate it. So join us next week when we'll touch on terminals and how to use them not only in Windows but also on Mac and Linux. Hope you'll join.